So these high dopamine peaks, where they're just not natural for our brains. Our brains are not geared for that, and the lifestyle based upon that, you just can't make it work. So what is that like? What would be an analogy or metaphor for that? Well, I would say it would be like having a nice car and taking it and going, accelerating fast and enjoying the driving, but then trying to accelerate even more to 7 or 8, 9,000 RPMs. And that means the camshaft, the pistons, the engine is spinning faster and faster and faster. And yes, it makes a great noise. It accelerates the car fast. It's enjoyable. And the car can do it. But if you do it too much, you're going to overheat the engine. You're going to physically break the engine because it's really not geared to operate at 8,000 RPM all the time. And so it overheats. Another example would be cooking brownies. You can try to cook them at 600 degrees and it would take you 7 or 8 minutes in the oven, but you'd notice like the outsides are all black and burnt and the insides are cooked. You just can't cook brownies in 5 minutes. It takes a certain amount of time. And so the same with the human brain. You can't get happiness by revving it too high, by getting these big dopamine surges. It's just not natural. It's not the way the brain wants to work. It's not the way it works on the best. And ultimately, happiness is going to be more of a contentment, more of like driving along a country road at 2,000 or 3,000, accelerating 4 or 5. It's not to say you can't enjoy peaks in your brain experience, but trying to get it from a chemical, again, it's just not what we're built for. And scientists now have shown us why that is the case. And that's, I think, a great insight as someone interested in spirituality, why it just doesn't work. Someone I know who in my family was a medical researcher, very high up. He was a bench scientist, so he actually worked with the drugs and chemicals, and he said that Benadryl, or diphenhydramine, was what he called a dirty drug. And what he meant by that was, we take Benadryl if we're bitten by a bee, or it as a sleep aid. And, I was saying, I noticed the next day I feel a little out of it, a little depressed, a little like not my best self. And he goes, oh yeah, diphenhydramine or Benadryl is a dirty drug. I go, what do you mean by that? And it means it has a lot of chemical interactions in the brain and body that are separate from its main one, helping you sleep. So it has a lot of negative side effects. And I'm wondering if alcohol really is a dirty drug. It gives us that high, it causes that dopamine rush, which is bad enough in itself, but I'm wondering if it has a bad effect on memory, and it also shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the higher thinking brain. It prevents that from sending down inhibitions. All the crazy stupid things people do when they're drunk, that's because their higher brain, their thought brain says, no, that's not a good idea. No, let's not get in a fight at the bar. No, let's not drive home because that's not a good idea. All the stupid things that people do when they're drunk. And so it is sort of like a dirty drug. It has all these unintended side consequences that really are not associated with happiness. Because if you wanted happiness, you'd want something that allowed your prefrontal cortex to work, to protect yourself, and to think up good ideas. And you'd want your memory to work really good so you could remember this great experience. Like a lot of people, New Year's Eve will get drunk, and they know they had a good time, but they don't know what they did. Did they really have a good time? They maybe have some vague memory of that, but if you really have an enjoyable experience, you want to be able to recall it and relive it and enjoy it. So alcohol, I would say, something like Benadryl, it's a dirty drug. It has a lot of negative side effects. I have a friend who does not drink at all, and she said that, yeah, I know I don't drink, and I don't give in to peer pressure at all. So she's very clear about how she handles alcohol. And I thought that was helpful. Not only does she define herself as a teetotaler, absolutely no alcohol at any time ever, she knows that friends are going to try to get her to have a drink, to enjoy it. She's faced that, and she knows she's in her 50s, and she knows that it's not something she wants to do. So she has defined herself as someone who does not give in to peer pressure. She knows it's coming. She knows that she's not going to give in to it. So she's defined herself. And I think that's helpful for me and us, perhaps, in looking at this problem of the social validation of alcohol use. Again, I think of it as sort of like something like heroin or fentanyl or cocaine or ecstasy, any of the drugs. Probably similar to cocaine. I wouldn't be taking any of these drugs in small amounts and pretending I'm doing something good for myself. But we really have normalized that with alcohol, and we've talked about that. It's so normalized, even when we watch a sitcom or a movie, it's normalized. We go to a religious event, there's alcohol there. A social event, a musical event. Go to the symphony, they have wine there. It's go to restaurants, go out with friends, and some people that's primarily what they do is they'll go to a winery or brewery, and that's their focus. Go to a bar, and that's all they do is drink and talk. It has really been normalized, and it has been normalized as a way of socializing. So we have to come to some terms with that. And we're going to have to be, I think, if you want to be a teetotaler, you have to really know who you are and what you're willing to do. And perhaps, I wish a society would be focused on non-drinking alternatives. And that's what I do in my life. I do, for instance, a lot of hiking. So I'm out hiking for hours, and that's a very social event. We'll have, 10 to 20 people on a hike. And so that's a very social event. And there are a lot of other events like that. And when I go to a musical event right now, I will often not drink. So I have to make that. But I wish that our society was not so much didn't base social life on alcohol. And I think, from teenage years to college, it becomes something that people do. It's just like, we're just going to get together and drink alcohol. And it's frustrating because it is such a dangerous, addictive substance that really doesn't give anything to life. And then it becomes its own rationale. The drinking causes this desire for another one, and it becomes this cycle. And then the next day you want to repeat that cycle. It's become so normalized. So the problem is defining one's self-definition. Really, to be a teetotaler is going to be a little bit difficult. But again, the reward is you will be a little bit happier overall in life. But it's a difficult question, and so I give the example of that woman who defines herself, no, I don't drink at all, and I don't give in to peer pressure. That's a good attitude to have. One of the truly sad things about alcohol and other drugs is that it tends to often victimize people who have had some sort of negative experience, some sort of trauma in their life, some sort of social awkwardness or social deficit, something that they're looking for a fix from alcohol. It could be as simple as, say, someone who is really shy, doesn't know how to talk to people. Alcohol can really, shut down those inhibitions and make people more social. People who are, say, depressed or upset or anxious and worried, they can find this miracle substance that makes them feel better. And then they are in a group of other people drinking. So it can sort of be a situation where they're self-medicating, where they are taking a chemical substance that makes them feel better, and they can really feel that because they feel bad so much of the time it makes them feel good. And then they get hooked into the habit of doing that. And then if they don't pull back, if they don't get out of alcohol early enough, then the alcohol, which answered that one problem, it itself becomes a problem. And now they sort of have two problems. They've had a difficult life. Alcohol sort of offered a promise for a better life, and it worked for a little bit. But now they've got the alcohol too. And they never really developed the social skills, the personal skills, the spiritual skills to find meaning and adventure in life. And so now they've got a double problem. Now they've dug their hole deeper. And you'll see a lot of that with alcohol and drug users, that they tried it as a panacea, as a cure, and now they've got the double problem. So now they have to get out of the alcohol, and they also have to address that underlying problem. So for example, some people who are brought up with alcoholic parents had a bad childhood, and then they start to drink as a way of dealing with the emotional neglect and abuse that they experienced, and it sort of becomes now a double problem. So that's another one of the really sad things about alcohol, and it really doesn't help them deal with issues. It doesn't help people deal with issues. So again, a very pernicious substance. And another aspect is I want to create a world where alcohol is not so omnipresent, so not so worshipped, not so indulged in, not necessary, and that there are other much more healthier options. And I want to be part of a community that is offering that. And so many people in the United States, 300 million people plus, and 10 to 20 million people have a serious problem with alcohol. So I want to be on the right side of history. I want to help these people. It's a lot of people. And so I feel that it's not something I really want to associate with as much, just because of the negatives associated with other people. I want to be part of a community of authenticity, and it matters that other people are being hurt by this substance to me. So as a spirituality of compassion says, I want to reach out and help these others by doing something different. So I'm 62 years old. I know some people say I don't look 62, but yes, I'm 62. And so part of this is really something I've been thinking about a long time in my life. I know alcohol causes a lot of serious problems for people, but I enjoyed moderate drinking. And I thought it really was something that helped my heart. The social scientists were saying, oh yes, it's great for your heart. Medical people will look at those studies and say, yes, it's awesome. It's an awesome drug. Wish we had a pharmaceutical that could do that. But no, that turned out to be false, misleading. So I guess as someone who's older, who has really thought about this, that I would say it's probably better to really just totally get out of alcohol when you're younger and just get into much better things in life. There are much better things. I don't think it really counts as doing anything. It's not an activity that has an inherent value to it. It gets boring. It gets boring. It leaves me in sort of a tired, blank feeling. My brain had been sort of drained for a little bit, and afterwards I didn't feel so good. And then I really noticed, yeah, it didn't count as anything versus having worked out, having gone for a walk, a long walk or hike, having read something, having studied something, having worked on hobbies would leave me more refreshed. So, someone who's older has lived through it, I would say, probably you really definitely want to try this 90 days and see if you can do it. And if 90 days is hard for you to do, maybe that tells you something. And it does take effort in part because of the way our society has glamorized and normalized and celebrated alcohol as something that gives something. It doesn't. It doesn't really give anything. And, I've been really attuned to that spiritually by really focusing on what I'm feeling in each moment after drinking, the day after. And so I would say, if you're younger, it'd be a great time just to not take all this risk in your life and really look how dangerous and addictive this substance is. And even light to moderate use is not giving you anything. So I'd get it out of your life and get used to it. I would go back in my own life and I would drink much less and get out of it and focus on something else.